Wonderful. Good morning for anyone who's joined us. My name is Marius. I'll be giving introductions in a moment, but first we'll literally give about 30 seconds to a minute for more people to arrive online. It's early in the morning. One apology from me, and that is true to form, they've started fitting a new kitchen next door. So if you hear some horrendous drilling noises, hopefully you won't with the microphone I've got, but that's what it is. We're not trying to give you an aversion to going to the dentist next time. So we'll literally start in about 30 seconds to a minute, but I'll let you just see the lovely screen as an introduction to what we will be addressing today. Thank you very much.
You might need to urgently mute Marius if there's lots of drilling. I'll have to fill the space. You could mime to me what you were planning to say, and I'll say it on your behalf.
Yes, I still remember the Monty Python sketch where they did a famous novel, by Semaphore. Heathcliff, Heathcliff.
Yeah, that's very funny.
Lovely. That's brilliant. So we'll just give it literally just another minute and then we'll begin. Fantastic. So, welcome, colleagues, to one of our first events to launch, if you like, Neurodiversity Week. I was incredibly privileged to be introduced to Nancy Doyle, Dr. Nancy Doyle, quite recently, and it came about when we launched our program quite recently called Be That Teacher. This is an attempt to get teachers to deploy assistive technologies in mainstream classrooms. We now work with nearly 400 schools across the country. People are finding amazing things about it. And we did a press release because we've been so lucky to have HSBC Bank to sponsor this program absolutely free for schools and teachers across the country, if not the world. We've had people joining from many different continents. Nancy saw the article and then produced another article for Forbes magazine. And it really rocked my boat. Is literacy becoming obsolete? I will put this link into the chat pane so you can read the article for yourself presently. Nancy's premise was that things are changing. Things are changing at a rate which is truly remarkable in terms of the power and potential of assistive technologies to give a level playing field in the workplace, in life, for young people and adults with dyslexia, ADHD, and other neurodiverse conditions. Now, we have to ask the question, if that's happening in business and society, is it happening in schools? With a workplace where assistive technology is not just a luxury, but is an absolutely vital adjunct to fast, sophisticated working. Are we really going to rely on a literacy curriculum or a literacy approach which has its roots in Victorian England? With the new ways of working, with so much information now being delivered by video, e-learning, live lectures, surely we need to question where literacy is and what literacy means in terms of mass communication and media. And we need to look at it through the eyes of the millions, and I mean that term, to the millions of children and adults who perhaps find 2D sequencing difficult in terms of reading and writing. And I do mean millions. We don't want to prevent people, as Nancy so adroitly said, we don't want to limit people behind a grammar and spelling war. We have to question what's happening in schools. We need schools to get competent and cognizant with augmented learning using assistive technologies. Otherwise, a number of our young people are going to fall behind, tragically behind, and their full potential will never be realized. We hope that Be That Teacher is a step in the right direction. And we will look forward in this webinar to actually questioning the premise of literacy. It may sound controversial. It may sound controversial, but maybe, just maybe, our English curriculum is discriminatory. Now, before I let Nancy loose on you, I would very much like you to participate in this workshop. We will be, unfortunately, we won't be able to give you the opportunity to speak. It's the lockdown bit of the way we do Zoom. I do apologize for that. But we have the webinar chat pane. We also have questions and answers. We want to hear your views. This is not just about me. This is not just about Nancy. This is about developing through a jolly good argument and some great insights that you will also offer to question this whole premise about what literacy means and where it is. And do put your name and your interests into the chat pane now as I introduce Nancy. So Nancy, thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope I pulled out of that Forbes article some of the key bits that you said. But Nancy, I'd love you to rehearse that argument that you came about, that growing gap between the workplace and the school system, and the fractures that enable some of our young people disable some of our young people falling through the gap. Nancy, please.
So that article is a theme that I've been working with for a long time, actually. I wrote a blog years ago for a website that doesn't exist anymore called Reading as a Transition Technology, Discuss. And I think, we get very hung up on teaching literacy and grammar in schools. And, if you don't learn literacy and grammar easily in schools, then you are continually forced to continue learning literacy and grammar throughout school in a way that is very mechanistic, very lacking in meaning or engagement. And I think, the main point is what is literacy for? What is literacy for? So if we think about the whole of human history, hundreds and thousands of millions of years, one of the things humans do particularly well compared to other species is long-term memory. We pass on knowledge, we develop knowledge, and we share it. And that goes back, I mean, when I was in America a few years ago doing a huge drive around the Rocky Mountains, and there were markings on caves, which indigenous American people had written thousands and thousands of years ago, pointing out the directions to various things. So this particular skill of ours, which is to pass on and retain knowledge, we used to do it through pictures, we used to do it through art, we used to do it through what's the things the Egyptians do? I can't remember. It's
hieroglyphics.
That's the one.
Yeah. And we also had a huge oral tradition, didn't we? The fire.
Precisely.
Absolutely.
So oral traditions, hieroglyphics. So that is fundamental to humanity. Obtaining knowledge, developing expertise, passing it on and sharing that knowledge so that more humans can benefit and engage. And, we worked at it. It's a fundamental way in which we enact community in our species, and it's fabulous. But the idea of translating all of that knowledge into 2D sequential code, that is not That's not normal. That's something that's been part of humanity for a few hundred years, for a few thousand years, maybe. But we have to remember that most people were illiterate. It was really only priests and scientists or kings that had literacy 200, 300 years ago. Most people were still learning by apprenticeship learning. If you had 4 children, let's say you were a farmer and you had 4 children, and your eldest son was going to be the person that you left your farm to, and you had 3 other kids, you think, oh, what should I do with those 3 other kids? And one of them was really good at kind of fine detail, putting things together, making things, and you'd think, oh, I know, I might apprentice him to the blacksmith because he's quite good at making things. And another one really had the gift of the gab and liked to talk a lot. You might think, well, actually, I might keep, this one's got a really good role going to market and selling the wool that we've got left over from our sheep. Let's let that have that one do that. And people would learn, and industries were created and jobs were conducted without the need to write everything down and without the need to pass an exam in being a market trader or do the reading of the history of market traders and then write an essay about a market trading. No, we just used to go and do market trading. So we got to the 19th century and we had industrialization, and industrialization required a certain amount of sitting still, repetitive actions over and over again. So right there, the ADHDers are a bit annoyed because all of a sudden we have to sit down and do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. But also we started to communicate because we had the printing press. So the printing press was invented, and a lot of our information started being communicated through this 2D sequential code that we call literacy. And then it just became more and more necessary for people to learn to read and write in order to be part of civic society, because our news was being shared like this. Instead of a town crier, we had a newspaper boy. Instead of going to church and just listening to sermons, people were studying the Bible at home. Or other religions in other parts of the world as well. So literacy became quite embedded because it was an easy way to communicate across a larger number of people all at once. But we don't need to do that anymore. We've got other ways of communicating across larger groups of people all at once. And yet our school system is still insisting that if you want to be a hairdresser and you want to do your NVQ in hairdressing, you still need to be able to read and write to GCSE standard. If you want to be a bricklayer, you need to read and write to GCSE standard. And it just doesn't make sense to me. A lot of the jobs that we're training people for aren't reliant on literacy. I've given you 2 examples: hairdresser, bricklayer. These are really good careers for people who might want to be independent and run their own businesses at some point. But you can't get into them without GCSE literacy. And just to point out, I don't think I would pass GCSE English anymore because it's so crammed full of grammar and spelling these days that it's become very mechanistic. But even jobs like being a surgeon. So I sit on the board of the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges to give advice on adjustments that people might make for disabilities. And the exams to become a consultant surgeon are both based on multiple choice quizzes. So they think that they're measuring long-term memory. And I'm like, you kind of are, but you're also measuring how quickly people can decode grammar. And let me tell you, if I'm having open heart surgery, I don't really care if my surgeon can decode grammar. That's not really what I care about. I do care about his or her long-term memory or their long-term memory. I do care how quickly they react. I do care how good their fine motor control is. But if they know the difference, if they can decode a double negative sentence, I'm not really bothered. And so we're using literacy as a proxy for the skill we're actually trying to measure, which is, does this person know enough? Can they react fast enough to be a good surgeon? But we're measuring that skill using a method that takes place in a completely different part of the brain. So
Yes.
the risk is that we exclude people from professions like surgery, bricklaying and hairdressing who would be really good at that job just because they can't do literacy. And also that we let people into those jobs who aren't very good at it, but are very good at literacy. So the method that we're using to get people into work doesn't gel with with the parts of the brain and the skills they have to use once they're actually in the job. And that's really the
Let me
thing.
stop you
Yeah.
there for a minute. I'm going to show you a short extract of video. Okay,
Mhm.
this was somebody who used an aid to correct for dyslexia. It's called
Yeah,
LexiLens, a fantastic pair of wearable glasses which
yeah,
filter the image in to the brain.
yeah.
Because they find that people with dyslexia have two dominant eyes, and it's that clash which causes the letters to jumble and move around. He, this is a guy with multiple degrees, okay, and he is using a tool. And I think it frames exactly what you said about the challenges that some people have with
Mhm.
dyslexia. So here we go. I'll just share it, and I'll share it with sound, which is always something that I forget to do. And here we go. Supportive device like LexiLens. This is someone who visited the booth at a consumer electronics show and used the glasses for the first time. He read a passage, then he put his normal glasses on without LexiLens. Um, uh, the response, I think, was quite extraordinary. Here we go.
That's that's incredible. You good? Yeah, yeah, thank you. That's really nice. Yeah? Was it? I read twice as fast.
While multitasking.
Let's say it again.
While multitasking.
Um, the amount of energy that goes into trying to understand what I'm reading. So, I mean, I have multiple advanced degrees, but I need twice as long on a test just to read the stupid questions. The the ease at which I was able to see the word, hear it in my mind, understand what that meant, and put 3 to 4 words together without having to then go back a line, because that's a lot of processing if it's not automatic in your brain, and then to go back a line, reread what I'd forgotten I'd read because I was working on the line I was reading, piecing it all together. It was very, very easy. It was twice as fast. And I read it without the glasses the second time, so I'd already read it all the first time with the glasses, taking off the glasses, reading it a second time, it still took twice as long. That's fantastic. That's really quite fantastic.
I think that kind of says it all, doesn't it,
It
Nancy?
absolutely does. It absolutely does. And I think, what I'm thinking watching that is that we've got this challenge as a society where we've got all of these embedded systems about education, whether we like it or not. I'm not going to win that argument in the medical royal colleges. They are still going to use those tests and assessments because we've got to have a way of scaling education and scaling the way that we test and react to people's knowledge. But with all these technology tools that are now available, they should be available during our education, during our learning. What we do is we put people in remedial classes to kind of force them to learn to read and write faster, when actually once you've got to a certain level, kids are either going to get it or they're not. The kids that get it quickly, great. Some kids need a bit of extra work, but they get there. And then there's some kids, and you can just see this is an absolute nightmare for them. Now, why don't those kids just have LexiLens glasses? Why don't all schools have a little repository of all the different assistive technology that exists and let the kids try and see, is this an eye thing? For a lot of dyslexics, it is. It's about visual perception. For other dyslexics, it isn't. It's about the phonological processing. In which case, the auditory stuff works. So having the kit that read back technology will work for them, and let the kids work this out so that they can at least get the knowledge. And then when they're doing their NVQ in bricklaying or their consultant surgical exams, they can use the same technology to overcome the literacy barriers there. And then we end up with good hairdressers, good bricklayers, and good
Wow.
surgeons.
Nancy, absolutely. So let's roll. See why do we have examinations, right?
Mm.
The English examination system is designed to, dare I say, rank and file the rank and file. naughty, sorry, I had to say it, but it's about getting people into university. More than that, it's about grading people into university so the very best can go to the very best universities and the others can have opportunity. The way we select is through A-level exams. And the A-level exams, again, allow this ordering, if you like, of intellect as measured through your ability in a written exam. The GCSEs are designed to get people into A levels. And so what we have is, I think, a university sausage factory that actually starts at the age of 5. Everything we do in terms of graded assessment is designed from the age of 5 to get some young people up to and into a university setting. This is my biggest gripe about English and maths GCSEs. It is about content, and it is about English and maths as subjects with subject knowledge rather than the competencies of literacy and numeracy. What do you think about that? Am I being controversial by saying that?
No, not at all. No, I don't think you're being controversial at all. Sir Ken Robinson, the late professor of education, did a fantastic TED talk. If you haven't watched it, do it next after you finish watching this. Watch that. Just Google "schools kill creativity," and he suggested that if an alien came to visit Earth, he would assume that the entire purpose of education was to create university professors, because everything is sort of, chunked down from that being the ideal. And actually, if the world was entirely full of university professors, we wouldn't have bridges, we wouldn't have houses, we wouldn't have we wouldn't have food. There's a lot of things we wouldn't have. So, it's not the be all and end all. But you're right, that's what schools tends to do. It tends to privilege a certain type of education over other education. And I completely agree with you. It is about we work in prisons at Genius Within, and there was one prison we were working at, a women's prison called Eastwood Park in west of England. And in Eastwood Park, they had started teaching literacy through parenting courses, because a lot of the women that were there were terribly worried about their kids. They were missing their kids, and they were frightened that they wouldn't be able to have custody of their kids once they'd been released from prison. And so they really needed to work on that. So they constructed a literacy course around parenting skills. So when they were doing things like different types of language, they had an exercise where they had sort of 5 clippings from newspapers and said, which age do you think this is appropriate for? Do you think this story is appropriate for a 5-year-old? Do you think this story is appropriate for an 8-year-old? But because it was something that the women were genuinely interested in, that they related to their experience, they were able to engage in the material, and they all passed their basic literacy qualifications, their level 1 literacy qualifications. So it is partly about the material being not interesting, not relevant. I worked in schools for a couple of years in Hull, and again, the curriculum in a city where the majority of people in the school I was working with didn't have more than one working adult in their kind of family group. What are we doing this for? What is it for? Where are we going with this literacy? It's so boring unless it's got to be meaningful for you.
Oh, totally.
So there's meaning, but there's also the even when it is meaningful, if you're dyslexic, then it doesn't matter how meaningful it is. It is just unnecessarily hard. We've had a really good question in the Q&A, which I'd like to answer, if that's okay.
Of course, please do straight away. Yes.
So Michael has said, what specific challenges do we anticipate schools facing when they adapt their curriculums to accommodate the growing importance of assistive technology in education? And genuinely, I think my response to this is the technological skill of the teachers. I think,
interesting.
I think we have to agree that a lot of teachers are in teaching because they are the people who succeeded in the education system. They don't necessarily see the need for alternative methods of communication because I
think it's more than that. It's more than that. But the policy leaders And the
The possi
politicians
yes,
who have never known what it's like not
yeah,
to know, or have never known what it's like not to learn formally, because those are
yeah,
their skills. They, of course,
yes.
see the world through their eyes.
Yeah, so I think, there's first of all, we've got to establish the need for this and make people realize that, we could be reducing behavior difficulties, reducing absenteeism if we made the curriculum accessible with assistive technology. So that's like job number one. We've got to do the kind of hearts piece, do people actually want to do this? But then the second thing is the minds piece. And sometimes assistive technology, people, I mean, I'm a Gen Xer. I'm nearly 50 years old. I hate technology. When I have a new piece of software to learn, it really freaks me out now. I've got to the age where I just literally can't absorb new information like that. If one more company that I'm a customer of insists that I need an app to use their service, I might just explode. You might find little bits of Nancy all over the place because I'm really becoming very technology resistant. And I think that's going to be a problem for the adults in the education system. I would worry assistive technology is part of my thing that I know how to do. So it's not the same for me. But when I think about any people, someone's just popped, the kids are fast adapters, maybe they should teach to teachers. That's exactly what should happen. So that's the barrier we're going to have to get over. But yeah, the kids are going to learn it faster than the teachers. What a lovely community event that would be if you've got the kids teaching the teachers how they use assistive
Well,
technology. That would be
I've got a
lovely.
counter to that. I've got a counter to that. If you take your ordinary mobile phone, yeah,
Mhm.
or an online game, children will learn what they need to do their tasks and do them
Mhm.
quickly and effectively. And just to see the thumb speed of some people on trains texting their
Mhm.
friends is unbelievable, right? But that's all they do. They do not explore the other functions on their phone. They do not explore the wider possibilities that technology opens up. Because we are good at just-in-time learning. We learn what we need. So it's even more than that. In the same way that we explore an environment in a new park or a new town or a new place, we need to also foster that sense of exploration when it comes to the tools that we have. And I really fear for education because we do not ever, maybe if we do the international baccalaureate, there's a degree of exploration built into that, your project work
So
site.
say one of my kids is doing that and he does quite a lot of exploration, but he also
Exactly.
has a hell of a lot of homework.
Yeah. Leave that aside. But somehow, I believe one of the first things we need to do is attempt to get a sense of exploration and the joy, the fun, and the excitement of exploration into a school curriculum, which at the moment is locked down because teachers are fearful of the grades the children get. It's nothing to do with learning. It is a fear factor driven by Ofsted, driven by the way schools are ranked, that shapes the entire system. What happens to young people who are neurodivergent? They are more likely to be excluded from school, right?
Yes.
Because they do not learn effectively, because their progress will hamper the overall progress of the school. It's not about the individual anymore. This, I believe, is one of the things that's baked into our education system: a fear, a fear of failure rather than an aspiration to succeed. I think. I think. There's a lovely comment there from Michael to the hosts who said, "I got E's in my maths and English, but um, I've got myself a successful career." Absolutely, and schools are now, focusing on grades. If you happen to have auditory dysfunction, if you happen to have hearing loss or visual loss, and you struggle to communicate, it's a barrier, and I suppose it's down to that distinction, isn't it, between the medical model of disability and the social model of
It
disability?
is,
Shall we just talk
absolutely.
about that just for people who might
Yeah.
not understand it? So, what do you
So,
understand by the medical model of disability, Nancy?
so the medical model of disability is that individuals have impairments. and those impairments are why they cannot get ahead.
Yeah.
So I'm an ADHDer. I have a cognitive impairment. My concentration is different to other people's. I find it very hard to do one thing at once. I prefer to have 3 things on the go at any one time, and I don't find it very easy to sit still. I need to move to think. So in the medical model, that would be because I'm broken and I need fixing. There's something wrong with my concentration. There's, you know, I should be able to sit still for 8 hours a day because, yeah, that's really normal, isn't it? In terms of our evolution. But yeah, so it's saying that, yeah, the things that I can't do are things that all humans should be able to do. And the fact that I can't do them means that I have a deficit and I need
And then you have to be fixed.
Yes, I have to change to fit into the system.
Yeah, or you're given support and help and
Yes.
disempowered because of
Yes.
that support and help to do it.
So patronised or chastised, one of the two. But
I love that. Yes.
the social model of disability says that the reason I'm disabled is because we've got a situation where I'm required to sit down for 8 hours a day. So if I was in a different environment, that wouldn't necessarily be as disabling. And so, you know, we can apply this to all disabilities. So is a wheelchair user disabled because they don't have the use of their legs, or are they disabled because there aren't enough buildings with step-free access?
Exactly.
So the social model of disability would say that, well, if all buildings had step-free access, then being a wheelchair user wouldn't be as disabling as it is now. So it's not about kind of black and white. It's about the extent to which things are disabling or not disabling. And within the social model of disability, we try and make each environment as universally designed for as many people as possible as we can. And back to the thing I was saying earlier about the Industrial Revolution. Before the Industrial Revolution, we had jobs and ways of learning and being in community that were much more expansive and included a lot wider range of specialist thinkers. And then within the industrial level, we kind of truncated it all, and we said, right, what we're considering normal is now we need everyone to read and write, we need everyone to be able to do numeracy, we need everyone to do fine motor control, we need everyone to sit still for hours at a time, and we need people to do that in increasingly loud, busy environments. And if you can't do one of those 5 things, then you must need a label that makes you disabled. So within the social model, what we're trying to do is open that out, and assistive technology is a massive part of that. In fact, all technology is a massive part of that.
Yes, and I think my fear is that growing gap between the classroom and the workplace.
Yes,
because
very much so.
you and your company works again, for any educationalists on this call, you might not be aware of something called workplace adjustments, WPA. And this is born out of the Equality Act of 2010, and it is incumbent on businesses to make the appropriate adjustments so that anyone with any disability has a fair access to the workplace, has the same.
Can I just say, Marius, the
Yeah.
Equality Act applies to all organisations, not just workplaces.
Absolutely.
It also applies to schools and hospitals and transport providers and local government. You know, one of the things that I think goes wrong in schools is that when we are challenging special educational needs, we are doing it with local authorities and challenging them to implement their policies. But what we could also be doing is challenging the schools in their ability to be compliant with the Equality Act. Because the Equality Act, you know, having a policy in the Equality Act trumps local education authority policies. It trumps it all. Everybody that runs any kind of organisation is responsible for making adjustments for disabled people so that we can include disabled people, and is responsible for universal design and thinking about a wide range of people with a wide range of abilities in the design of environments. We could say the design of curriculum, the design of services. You know, I think there's a potential to challenge what's happening in schools on the basis of the Equality Act. And I actually think that would go further. One of the reasons that the workplace was never this far ahead. You know, it really wasn't. It is now. The workplaces on average, I think, are streets ahead of educators. But that wasn't always the case. In the late 90s, when I started working in disability inclusion, workplaces were just as bad as hospitals, just as bad as schools, just as bad as everywhere else, particularly for neurodivergence and thinking about autistic people, dyslexic people, dyspraxic ADHDers. But one of the things that has happened is we've had a lot of legal challenges in the workplace, a lot of legal challenges. The number of legal challenges for neurodivergence has increased 30% in the last few years. And as a result, employers are now starting to think, you know, this is a cost risk. I can't take the risk of being challenged in court and having a disability discrimination case, what that does to just the payout that I have to make, but also the stress that causes my team, the difficulties in HR, the reputation that brings to my business. This is a wide reputational damage and hard cash damage that I don't want to spend. Now, if that's my risk over here and it's 30, 40 grand of direct costs plus brand image and reputational damage, all of a sudden I'm looking at something like, you know, some of those glasses or some speech to text software, which is going to come in at, you know, a few hundred, if that. Sometimes, you know, that suddenly looks like a really feasible, reasonable cost compared to the opposite. Whereas in education, we still don't have those challenges.
No.
People are taking they're taking local authorities to court, but not schools. The local authorities lose 95% of the time, but because the challenge is on the implementation of their policy, you don't get legal aid to support a claim. You don't get any payout, even if you win your claim. So parents that are winning 95% of legal challenges in the education system they don't even get their costs recouped. So they're the only people that are able to challenge are the people that have got 20, 30 grand to pay a barrister. But I know people who are remortgaging their houses in order to challenge education systems according to their policy. And I think we should be challenging them according to the Equality Act. And I think things would change if we did.
Oh my goodness, that is an incredible challenge actually laid down. Let's think solutions now. Okay, I was incredibly fortunate to be CEO of a charity and an awarding organisation called ASDAN Education. This was back in 2010. ASDAN champions the alternative curriculum. So different ways of celebrating knowledge, skill, and at the heart of it was literacy and numeracy, but not in the sense of a regulated exam, which was stuck into content. And for a long time, and we've still got them buried somewhere, we've got something called functional skills. Functional skills in literacy, functional skills in numeracy. Now, it's not rocket science, but we still need to ensure that everyone in our school system is literate and numerate, if only to access the world. But it's how we define being literate and numerate that is the critical issue. My thoughts back in 2010 was a two-tier examination system. Yes, we have to be aspirational for the brightest and the most able in society because that's what we do. That's great. Okay, let's keep the GCSEs. Let's keep the pathway to university. But why not introduce a threshold? A threshold or communication skills and for numeracy. A simple threshold, which is your fundamental building blocks of being able to access living, learning, and working in the 21st century. And the way you get to that threshold could be through oral skills, through portfolios of evidence, through what you can do rather than what you can't. And we've got the standards already for functional literacy and numeracy at entry level, at level 1 and level 2. If we just twisted things around in schools ever slightly to say, look, it's incumbent on you as a school community to get as many of your children through to level 2 as possible, as demonstrated by a wide range of competencies, not just a 2-hour written exam. But once they reach that competency level, yes, by all means, grow them grow them through the GCSEs and A levels, then I think we could ignite the system and get teachers to believe in a different way, because some pupils
Agree.
might reach that level 2 threshold by the age of 10. How
Mhm,
wonderful! Great.
mhm.
Let them go. Let them go. Let them explore that internet. Let them start to develop the higher order thinking skills that are going to be vital in the 21st century, because knowledge is redefined now, isn't it?
Mhm, mhm,
Knowledge is completely redefined. So
mhm.
let's equip kids with the skills to access, to integrate, to collate, to curate that knowledge, to produce new knowledge. Sorry, I'll get off my soap.
Agree. No, I agree. And I think the other thing is about timing. So I get often asked by parents, you know, how do I support my neurodivergent teenager? And one of the things I say to them is take all the time pressures off. Neurodivergent people develop at our own pace. You know, I didn't start my PhD until I was in my late 30s. I hated every moment of education until that point. I'd
Yes,
always just done education to get to the next bit, so that I could
yes.
do the job I wanted to do. But when you know, in my late 30s, I decided to do a PhD and I loved it. This isn't a race. Careers aren't a race. You know, you could leave school at 16 with nothing. At 25, you could do an access course, do a degree, and have a 40-year career with that in that subject. You know, the idea that I think we put too much pressure on young people, way too much pressure. This sense of if you don't do it now, you'll never do it. You know, rubbish. The world is full of examples of people who didn't do it now and still did it. And so I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, because, you know, we do need a certain amount of literacy and numeracy to be part of civic society. We need to understand our bank statements, our tax bills. We need to understand who we're voting for. We need to read things that cut letters that come from our councils and from the health service. So we do need a certain amount of participatory literacy, which can be helped still by assistive technology, readback technology, and various things like that can still overcome that if that's really a barrier for you still. But yeah, let's get everybody to a functional civic society level of literacy. And then the people who really are really motivated to go and learn something in more depth, they can do that in their own time. And if they happen to do it before the age of 16 because that's what they're interested in, great. But let's not penalize everybody else who isn't in that space. And let's
100%.
not assume that they'll never be in that space. You know, being written off in education is one of the most devastating things that can happen to a young person. And it's really predictive of whether or not that person ends up in the prison system, whether or not they have a healthy career,
Absolutely.
whether or not they end up in mental health and substance misuse care. You know, the school to prison pipeline is entirely based on being written off before you
Oh,
even get as far as
totally,
secondary
totally.
school.
I'm going to
I had
share
a
another. I'm going to share
Yeah,
another
you go.
brief video now. This is from our Be That Teacher program. We are encouraging schools to deploy these new technologies right down into reception classrooms in primary schools. And some of these technologies have been appropriated. For example, I don't know if you've heard about an app called Seeing AI or Lookout Assistive Vision. This basically turns your mobile phone into a speech to text device, and it's completely free.
Oh my goodness, that's fantastic.
So this is just an absolutely marvelous example of how two teachers have been who are using it. So let's get this started. Let's see if I can get it going. Here we go. Great.
It's been really good for us here. I've been looking at a couple of children in particular. I've been in and out of classes that I wouldn't normally have so much contact with this week. And there is a boy in one of our year 4 classes who really struggles with reading. And like some of you have said earlier, Kim, I think you said it, who's just so demoralized when he can see other people doing things that he can't. And he said, how comes they've all finished and I've not even started? And I said to him on that day, that's because, you know, you find it quite hard to read those things. How would you feel if you had something to help you with the reading? And he was like, what? So when we then downloaded the visual app, I said to him, pick a book. And he said, what do you mean? I said, which book on there do you really want to read that you've never been able to read? And he said, that one. And he picked the book, and I gave him the tablet, and he put it over it, and he went, oh my gosh, it's reading it to me. This is amazing. This is the best thing ever. Where can I get this? Can I have this on my tablet at home? So he was already thinking about how he can use that beyond school. And I just thought that was incredible. And I said to him,
I teach mixed reception year 1 class. I had a chat with a parent of a little boy who's got pathological demand avoidance and autism. He's also post looked after, so he's got attachment disorders and issues around trauma. Really complex little boy who's he's probably 4-word sentences we're working at, but loves books. That's his gateway to everything, is a book. So we use the Seeing AI. He's got his own iPad. And I was talking to Mum said he just wants to read, but knows he can't. And she sensed that frustration at home. So then the other day he was having kind of a meltdown, really dysregulated. And I just kind of went and got the iPad and started scanning it over a book he was reading. And he just stopped. And he said, foxes in the snow. It says foxes in the snow. And that just totally calmed him down. What I would say the challenges with that, because of his maturity, it's kind of holding it really still.
Yes.
And he got so excited because of his autism. He then was just kind of wanting to, it was like a magic tool that spoke to him.
Yes.
It needs to be planned into really careful situations. But when I shared it with Mum's downloaded it on her phone. Mum's like, this is brilliant. I knew there were things out there like this, but didn't realize they were so easy and free and on the iPhone. So I think when she's had times when she's taken him out somewhere and she's struggled to engage him in things, it's straight away the phone. But just seeing him go, it says foxes in the snow. And he's going, Mrs. Gilhilly, do it again. Like you wanted on the next page. So that's kind of 2 little snippets of success, but where I can see that it's not always easy with the technology, but yeah, success.
Lovely little examples there of what can be unleashed if we get the technology aligned to the young person. We're coming to the end, folks. If you've got any questions or any statements, if you agree with what's being said, we'd love to hear some of your comments in the chat pane, because I'm sure we are not lone voices. I think there are thousands of people out there who really want to challenge the system. Not because we just want to challenge the system, we actually want things to get better. So Nancy, I'd love you just to finish off today with some of your final thoughts. It's been brilliant talking to you, by the way. It's been wonderful. So over to you.
Oh, final thoughts. Am I freezing?
You did freeze for a minute then, but I can hear you.
Okay. So I think, we're in a transition period, aren't we? We're in a massive paradigm shift as a society. We're going from the industrial age to the technology age, and this stuff is inevitable. It's absolutely inevitable. I think my final thoughts are, do we really have to beg for it? It's going to benefit everybody. Being disability inclusive in education will lead to adults who know how to be disability inclusive in society and work. There is just no point in wasting human potential for the want of an app. Oh, you're on mute, Marius.
Some drilling next door. I had to mute myself. Yes, you're absolutely right. And of course, let's just finish off with this thought about everyone being frightened of the AI revolution. Artificial intelligence. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Well, what's actually going to happen is that we are going to be needing a whole new skill set. Which we're not teaching in schools. It's fundamentally different to access not just the curriculum, but to access and perhaps even question the information that's being delivered to us. What do you think, Nancy?
I agree. And I think, the amount of information available on the internet now is yeah, it does challenge us to develop critical thinking skills, because I'm loving all the shots of me that are coming up. I look really weird. Don't know what's happened to my internet connection. I haven't moved, I promise. Nothing has changed. Yeah, you know, it is going to require completely different thinking skills. And so by putting assistive technology in early into education and embedding technology in the way that we learn, we are better preparing children for the work future that they're going to experience.
Brilliant. Well, look, I'm going to put a link now into the chat pane. This is the link to Be That Teacher for anyone who is in a school or knows of a school. Maybe it's where your sons and daughters are, who might want to join the Be That Teacher program. As I said, it's fully funded at the moment by HSBC Bank. It's been amazing having their support. It's enabled us to reach nearly 200 schools additional to what we've done before. And as you could see from that short video, it really is proving transformational, not just for individual young people, but also for the teachers. And as Nancy said right at the start, it's about what the teachers can do as well as what the young people can do. Thank you for everybody who's joined the call. Nancy, thank you sincerely for your thoughts. We are going to use this video. We are going to share it with some of the politicians we know. We are going to try and rock the tree a little bit. And without your learned reflections, it wouldn't be as effective. But Nancy, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No, it's been marvelous. Now, please, we don't like to cut people off straight away, but when we stop the video recording, the workshop will stop. So I just like to thank all of you. Thank all of you for your thoughts, for your reflections. And the final thing I'm going to stick into the web page here is the email address of education@microlinkpc.com. Education@microlinkpc.com. If you've got any further thoughts or reflections, or you just want to vent, if you just want to pour it all out, just get in touch. Just get in touch with us. We will share your pain. We will share your enthusiasm, and we will gather our thoughts and thinking and try and make things forward. Yes, we are going to curate this video. Yes, it'll be available in a number of places. At Microlink, we've got something called Thought Leadership, which is exactly this, trying to transform the way we think and learn and do. We'll put a link to this video there. We'll also be using it on LinkedIn openly to start the discussion, not start the discussions, that's wrong, because a lot of people are thinking like we do, but actually just to gather other people together who believe passionately that things need to change. So we'll be stopping in a moment. Nancy, thank you again. Thank you to the Microlink team for hosting this event. Thank you, Anna, for setting it up. We hope that this has been a worthy contribution to what is a wonderful week of celebration on neurodiversity. Thank you all, and goodbye.